Good morning. I want to talk a little bit about something that I've dubbed infinity breathing. So I was working with a program from HeartMath, and they used to have an adapter. It would fit onto your finger, and it would monitor, or you'd run some software on your computer, and it would monitor your breathing and your heart rate. And it was like a biofeedback loop. It was training to get you to breathe a certain way, and you had to breathe and line up your breathing, in between your heartbeats. And what would happen? It would give you like a score, letting you know how you did. And if you were paying attention to the screen, you couldn't focus on the breathing enough. So they had an audio feedback, so you didn't have to look at the screen. You could just focus and then hear by the different beeps that it was making whether or not you were in tune or not. So while I was hooked up to this, I learned fairly quickly, because of the feedback, to breathe in what the coherent style, as they called it, coherence. And what I discovered, interestingly enough, is that if you bring an intrusive thought into your mind while you're doing this breathing exercise, it would knock you off course. And it wasn't, I don't know that I can explain what causes it to get off course, because it's not like your distracted rabbit hole kind of thing. Just the presence of that thought would cause the issue. So, I thought that's fascinating. So what I wanted to do was explore that, and what I discovered is that if you hold a thought that bothers you, and yet you continue to attempt to do the breathing, then eventually you can actually dissolve. You don't dissolve the thought, you dissolve the fact that the thought bothers you. And I think this is the fundamental element of most breathwork techniques, is to get you to breathe in a certain style in such a way that intrusive thoughts eventually just sort of get dissolved. So what I'm going to teach you is kind of the shortcut that I have found to getting there, to know that you're breathing relatively in the right direction in order to do this. So what I want you to do, first of all, is take a deep breath. And most people, when you say that, they instantly go, right? And what's happening is you're breathing in and you're lifting your rib cage. And when you lift your rib cage, and try this with me, because when you feel it, you'll feel it. You go, and you feel this, I call it a wall, right? You've hit this limit. You can't breathe in any further because your rib cage won't go up any higher. So there's nothing more to do, right? So that is what's known as shallow breathing. So, and the body in its infinite wisdom usually has multiple ways of doing things. So there is another way of breathing, and that is breathing with the diaphragm. So when you breathe with the diaphragm, you don't need to move the rib cage. You can, but you don't need to. And when you learn to push the diaphragm down, and this is hard to explain. Once you feel it, and you'll get it. But it's very difficult to explain because it's subjective, it's internal, it's not something external that you can describe and measure and so on. One of the things, I feel like I can feel my tailbone when I'm doing this. So you really sort of reach deep inside. And again, this is subjective language, so it's really difficult to express properly. But you feel like you're reaching deep inside, and you use that to pull the diaphragm down. Now, the interesting thing, and this is why I call it infinity breathing, is that when you breathe in with that method, you can't find a wall. It's like you can keep breathing in and breathing in and breathing in. Now, You will feel pressure. You will have to breathe out at some point, but it always feels like you can get more in. Like there's always a little bit more movement. You can stretch that muscle. You can stretch the diaphragm a little bit further. And again, that's why I've called it infinity breathing. So what you want to do is you want to focus on, pulling the diaphragm down deeply. And just letting the breath flow. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Try and do that. And now when I do some of these exercises and I say, work with an intrusive thought, a lot of people will go to the bottom of their horror chest, bring out the worst thing possible and say it doesn't work. It's like, okay, no. When you go to the gym, you don't try and bench press 500 pounds off the bat. Take something light and simple, something that mildly bothers you, and work on the exercise so that you get that feeling. Once you've understood it, then work on deeper and deeper things. Don't go to the bottom of the horror chest and pull out the worst thing imaginable. I know you want to deal with that, but learn how to deal with it first and practice that muscle so that when you're ready to lift heavier things, you can do that. So find something that is, slightly annoying, and then what I want you to do is hold that thought. And the process, like the winner's brain, and there's a number of other books that explain this, is what you're doing is you're pulling that experience from the amygdala, which is all based on experience and nonverbal. You're pulling it up into the prefrontal cortex. And when it gets to the prefrontal cortex, you're starting to use logic to process it. So if you can hold it in the prefrontal cortex and you're doing the infinity breathing at the same time, you're calming the amygdala. The amygdala says, oh, there are no fires here, there's nothing for me to panic about, and it desensitizes it to whatever it is that you're holding in your brain. So that's the essence of infinity breathing. I hope this helps you. Please feel free to give it a whirl, see what you think. Look up HeartMath. I think they still produce a device. They've got it. It's no longer a computer program. It's just a device that you hold. You put your finger on it. So you can use that device for biofeedback. I'm not an affiliate or anything, so there's no links to any of that stuff. But if you're interested in exploring it, they're the guys that sort of really dug into heart rate variability. I think there's a lot of other companies, a lot of other devices that do that now as well. So you're free to sort of explore whatever works for you. But if you can get to that point where you can just breathe and not feel that wall, that's the sign that you're getting this correct, right? So enjoy, have fun, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.